I want to give a talk about family values. One of the aspects of the Shambhala teachings is the Gesarv-Ling epic. And, the Gesarv-Ling epic is probably the Bible of Shambhala training. I'm sorry it's taken us so long to translate it. So you don't have much of it. You have a couple of chapters in this manual, and you can get a real sense of it from the writings. I've included the manual, and from the translations. But there should be about 1,000, maybe 2,000 pages of Gesar epic for you to read. You know, if you pick up a Bible, you know, it has the Old Testament and the New Testament in it. It's written on onion skin paper. You've got there the main scriptures of the Christian religion. And there are some chapters that are called wisdom chapters, and they have the Christian teachings in them. And there are other chapters that are narrative chapters, history chapters. And they tell you the history of the Jewish people, finding the Holy Land and being dispersed from the Holy Land and wandering about the earth. And they tell the story of Jesus and the story of some of the saints. Stories of some of the saints. Now, in the Shambhala Terma that Trungpa Rinpoche received, you get wisdom chapters. But there are no narratives. And you don't have a religion without narratives. You can't have a philosophy without stories. Because the stories are necessary to understand the philosophy. It's necessary to see somebody living the philosophy. And it's necessary to see somebody putting the teachings into practice. Now, there's a Tibetan word for these narratives. They're called back texts, gyap texts, because they're the background to certain teachings. Well, for example, the Mahamudra teachings, you know, all those yogas that are practiced in the Mahamudra tradition, and the practice of Vajrayogini and Chakrasamvara, all those fancy tantric Buddhas that are worshipped in those traditions. The meditation practice where you do something subtle and effortless with your mind in order to gain complete enlightenment by seeing the nature of mind. All of those practices are considered more or less secret. You have to study Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism from Tibetan gurus, and then you have to find a guru to give you the tantric teachings after accepting you into his or her secret circle. So, in theory, the Mahamudra teachings are secret. But the songs of Milarepa are the back text to the Mahamudra teachings. They provide the narratives to support all the Mahamudra teachings. And every single teaching in the Mahamudra tradition is given by Milarepa in one of his songs. There is nothing secret. There are no secrets at all. All the secrets are revealed if you read those songs. Now, there will be provinces in Tibet where everybody is a practitioner of Mahamudra. Every adult monk and nun has those secret teachings. And all their families kind of know about the teachings too. Everybody knows about the teachings. Even though they're secret, it is actually fundamentally the religion of the province. Now, we in America don't know that. Buddhism was brought to us in a very, very pure way, almost as an abstract philosophy. So, we can hardly imagine that a whole state would be Mahamudra, just like we have whole states that are Baptist in America. But it's a fact. Buddhism sinks into the land and becomes part of the land. So, in certain places in Kham, which is a province of Tibet, called Eastern Tibet or Kham, everybody practices Mahamudra, and Milarepa's songs, everybody knows them, and they are the back songs, the narrative text, to back up the teachings. So you study Mahamudra and you read the text. It's just like the Bible, with the story of the Good Samaritan and the life of Jesus, and Joshua fit something at Jericho, and Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho, and the Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount is the teachings, and the others are the narratives. In Amdo province, there is a place called Golok. It's a state within a state. And Golok is a territory around Mount Magyal Pomra. Now, we should know Magyal Pomra. Those of you who are members of this organization for years have chanted a chant to Machen Pomra, one of the protectors of our tradition. It's a protective deity. Machen Pomra is the god of that mountain, Magyal Pomra. We were given Machen Pomra as one of our protective deities because Trungpa Rinpoche has a family relationship with that deity. Because his people come from an area next door to that mountain. And so because of his family connections, we got that deity as a protector. This country around Magyal Pomra Mountain, which is called Golok, is full of bandits. It's basically inhabited by nomadic bandits, and they don't like strangers, and for centuries they've killed any stranger that comes into the province. And they're not real nice guys. They're swashbuckling, armed to the teeth, mounted robbers. And that's okay. Robbery in Tibet is an honorable profession. Sometimes they like to have pictures taken of their whole family, all of them on their horses with their guns, a whole family of robbers. Father robber and the little children robbers, the little boy robbers, all of them probably on their horses. What do you do for a living? I kill strangers and take their money. Nice. I am a CPA. The religion of Golok is Maha'ati. Now, here in America, Maha'ati is the most secret of all secrets. It is the super secret, highest teaching of Tibetan Buddhism. It's divided into 3 teachings, and one of them is called Cutting Through, and Trekchut. And Trekchut is the meditation practice that we do here at this center. So as a matter of fact, we're introduced to it fairly early. But there is a certain point at which you get entered into the full secret of it, where you have to be face to face with the guru, and that guru has to give you the mind pointing out instructions, show you how to do it directly, mind to mind. And without that, you can't do that practice. There are 3 main practices in Dzogchen. It's so secret I can't even name the other 2. Okay. But in Golok, everybody does it publicly. Everybody has been entered into the tradition. The background text for it, which has all the narratives, is the Gesarv Ling epic. Just the way you read the life of Milarepa to do Mahamudra, you read the Gesarv Ling epic to do Dzogchen. So, when we've translated the epic into English, people will be able to do Dzogchen more publicly. Now, the institution of Nyingma Lamas in the West have more or less decided that they're going to start giving the Dzogchen teachings more publicly. Dudjom Rinpoche plucked from the many prophecies that float around Tibet a prophecy that said that one day the teachings will go to the West, and in the West will be wise people, and then the Ati teachings, the Dzogchen teachings, the Great Secret, will be made public and will be taught publicly. And Dudjom Rinpoche, who was the head of the Nyingma in the previous generation, said this prophecy refers to the United States of America. Americans are very literate. They can, all of them can read. They're very intelligent people. And when we get to America, we're going to teach the Dzogchen teachings publicly. We're going to give them to the man on the street. And they've begun to do it. Now, one of them they still keep secret, more or less. But like Lama Wangdor comes to Milwaukee periodically, and he gives the Dzogchen teachings to anybody who shows up. He told us we can't keep anybody out. We can't charge, and we can't exclude anybody. Now, Michael and I brought him to Milwaukee, and the Shambhala Center hosted him, and he told us, these are my rules. You can't advertise for me. You can't charge for me. You can't send anybody away. And everybody who shows up, it's their karma to receive the Dzogchen teachings, and I'm going to give them publicly. So we said, well, you're a Lama, and we're ordinary guys, so you know best. Okay. And nobody's been harmed by this, and it's worked fine. Dzogchen teachings are taught publicly now, taught publicly. Another secret that's being spread. It's an exciting time. It's a time of vast, vast transitions for Tibetan Buddhism. None of us can understand what's happening right now to this religion. Nobody is in a position to tell because the transformations are too vast. There's no intellect that can look at it historically and understand it. One can simply see the signs of a sea change in the entire religion because it's being brought to the West. When anybody tries to guess what the change is going to be, you know, it's off your rocker. You know, I wouldn't guess, and I know a lot. Let's think about the Gesarvling epic. Now, the Gesarvling epic, I've said, is the background text for the Great Secret Dzogchen teachings. It is also the background text for the Shambhala teachings. All of the teachings taught in the Shambhala graduate program are in the Gesar epic. The teachings in the Shambhala graduate program are mainly shamanistic practices. Practices where you invoke shamanistic deities. Practices where you acquire energies from your environment. And, you know, shamanism's different from other religions. That's why we've got a special word for it. You know, witches and warlocks engage in magic, but they're not shamans. Shamans are a special kind of magician. They're magicians who are famous for traveling to the land, to the spiritual lands of their ancestors. They're magicians who are famous for invoking animal spirits and spirits of mountains and rivers. There are certain characteristics of shamans. Shamans usually wear mirrors on them, and there's an important reason for that, like the cosmic mirror. It's related to it. And Trungpa Rinpoche decided to give a whole load of shamanistic teachings to us in America, and we put them in the graduate program of Shambhala training. They're teachings which equip you as a warrior to live in the world in a spiritual way, but in a powerful and effective way. You enter the world equipped with these deities, these powers, these energies, these forces, and you cut through the world like a hot knife through butter. You gain the powers of a shamanistic yogan. It's a very specific thing. Gesarv Ling is the classical example of such a magician. His meditation practice is the highest secret practice of Dzogchen. The powers he exercises are the magical powers of a shaman, not a witch or warlock, not a saint, not a holy man. He doesn't do miracles like saints. He doesn't invoke the great horned one like a witch. He doesn't relate to nature spirits the way a witch or a warlock would. There's lots of different kinds of magic. He's not an alchemist like the Neoplatonic alchemist. He's a shamanic magician who combines shamanism with the highest, deepest view. We inherit that tradition. It's part of our enlightened society. So our enlightened society has a peculiarity about it. This approach to enlightened society that Trungpa Rinpoche spread, it's not quite like what you would expect. It's not simply what Buddhism would produce if the Bodhisattva path were turned into a country. If you want to find out what the Bodhisattva path would produce as a country, look at China in the Ming Dynasty. That's when monasteries took over the whole country. The Ming Dynasty was created by a revolution of Chinese monks, of Buddhist monks. And Buddhism took over the country and refashioned the whole country to fit with the Bodhisattva path. And, China from that period, of the post-classical period, is wonderful. Humorous, subtle, appreciating nature in this fantastic way, compassionate as hell, loaded with spiritual practitioners, and Zen Buddhism comes from that. With a fantastic, unique approach to meditation and to realization. And if you wanted to read about something that's absolutely characteristic of a society created by Mahayana Buddhism, I would read the life of Han Shan, Hanshan. He's a Ming Dynasty Zen master. And you can get a look at the whole society. But the enlightened society that we're pushing here isn't the Bodhisattva path expressing itself publicly that way. It's the shamanistic Buddhist path. It combines Tantra, shamanism, Confucianism, and Taoism with the highest meditation practice. How do you combine these and make them a society? Well, we've been talking about that all this week, but we've left out the shamanistic element. I'm going to add it during this talk. I'm going to slip it right in next to the gearbox and, to the right of the electrical system. It cometh from the Gesar epic. It involves magical practices that every Tibetan does. For example, there's awakening wind horse. Wind horse is a word for your dignity incarnated as energies in your body. It has a thing that means field of power. It's a Tibetan word for charisma. We translate it as authentic presence, which you develop encircling you. An invisible rainbow that encircles you and makes you the cynosure of all eyes. The object that everybody looks at. And when you walk into a room, everybody looks at you. When you're sitting at a board of directors meeting and you make a suggestion, everybody listens to you and thinks, well, that makes sense. When everybody's talking about a different approach to doing something, and you mention your approach, the whole group is magnetized until they're all agreeing with you, and the group reaches a consensus. The consensus was yours, because you had the greatest wonton, the greatest visible rainbow stretching from shoulder to shoulder. A good leader always has it. It doesn't matter whether you are morally good or bad. An evil person can have a great wonton. Yeah, there are lots of evil leaders. Hitler had pretty good wonton. Excellent. He has really fine charisma. And his wind horse was always, he just happened to be evil to the core. But his friends liked him. And he was a vegetarian. He can't be all bad. The key to how this becomes a society, how these practices become a society, has to do with family values. The deities you deal with in shamanism come from the earth. They're connected with a sense of place. And the philosophy, which is extremely abstract, has to meld with a sense of place for it to be manifest in this way as a society. So, for example, Gesar was a member of the Mukpo clan, and the Mukpo clan lived around Mount Magyar Pomra. And they found on the sides of the mountain certain sacred objects that became the totems of the Mukpo clan. Well, it's an interesting story. The founder of the Mukpo clan, Chipanakpo, had 3 sons. Those 3 sons married 3 women from other clans, and Chipanakpo, Grandpa, sent the 3 women out on the mountain and said, find totemic objects that we will use to name your family. And the women went out, and each one came back with something that they thought had some kind of natural power. One came back with a wolf's tail. A wolf had died and rotted, and the tail was still sitting there fluffy, and she brought back the wolf's tail. Another one came back with a kind of thistle, and I forgot what the third one came back with, but these things, Chipanakpo took them and said, okay, from now on your family will be called Wolf's Tail. And her descendants had that name. The sub-families of the Mukpo clan were named by these 3 women, according to these 3 women. And in the Tibetan way of matrilineal descent, they come down to this day. What Chipanakpo was doing was melding his family to the mountain, taking the deity principles or energy principles of the mountain and blending them with the descendants in his family so that the family would survive as long as the deities of the mountain were melded to the children. There are many stories like this in Tibet, and I included one of them in this book. It's called A Tribal History, and it's a story of the clan of Jigme Lingpa, a famous Golok philosopher. This young man is riding into the area that is around Golok, and he spends the night sleeping under a white boulder, and it's in an unpeopled territory at this time. And the deity of that area appears to him in a dream and makes a deal with him. And, basically the deity says, take care of my area ecologically, and I'll allow you to move in. Don't harm the streams. Don't piss in the streams. Don't have ruined meat to spoil the air. Don't burn things improperly. Live in my area and respect the land, and I will bless your family. And your family will thrive here. And every member of your family down the generations will have a connection with me and my court. And this deity was a deity of the mountain and had a court, a vast court of sub-deities. Some of the deities were diseases. Run around, and that deity, it's a demon, and if it touches you, you die. And he said, okay, I'm going to keep these guys away from you. And some of the deities were long life deities, and some of them were mountain and stream deities. The whole court, the whole Gansa Megillah, all of it comes along with the family. And these are the noumena of the family. They're the dralas, the local deities of the family. When you have local deities from your family, when you have an energy connection or a deity connection or a divine connection or whatever you want to say between you and the land, then your family is the land. You tame the land, to use the language of Buddhist monks. And your family survives as long as there's a person with a connection with that deity. As a matter of fact, membership in the family isn't a question of being descended from the semen of the father. You can adopt anybody you want into the family. It's the connection with the deity that makes the family. That's the key. Families are not bloodlines. Now, in Europe, they have a certain theory of aristocracy which has to do with bloodlines. Europeans are great at breeding horses, and they're breeding lots and lots of different kinds of animals, and they bred themselves and produced aristocratic lines by breeding themselves as human beings and producing really refined human beings down the line. These became the kings of Europe. It's an interesting way to do it. It's patrilineal, because that's how you control it. You get, a really aristocratic woman, and, you make sure that she marries one of your men. You make sure that she's fecundated by your son. It's got to be that. You make sure that she doesn't screw anybody else until she has been fecundated by your bloodline. Because bloodline is the key to aristocracy there. But in Tibet, where the families are both patrilineal and matrilineal at the same time, bloodline is not the key. And it's actually as much the deity in place as anything else. So you can restore your family by adopting new people into it. And they take on the family of deities, and they're members of the family. You have your ancestral shrine, and when they bow to the ancestral shrine and the ancestors accept them, it doesn't matter who they're descended from. Now, the art of taming the land and melding with the land, this is something that Buddhism has always exercised. You can see the external signs of it when they build statues. One of the ways of taming the land is to bury your saints in the soil. And it nails down certain hunks of property to be yours as long as that saint is in the ground. So Buddhists are very careful about the remains of their saints because they use them to claim land. Then there are ceremonies that are done to tame the land, where you bring down hunks of energy that become the local deities. It's really hard for me to explain. It's a certain ceremony where you kind of create new dralas. You can come to an unpeopled place that doesn't even have any local deities. And there might be an enlightened man among you, and you say, look with your Buddha eye, are there any deities here? He says, no, I see no invisible people. Okay, we'll make some. And they do a ceremony to infuse the land with energy from their religion. They Buddhify the land. And the land becomes Buddhist land. You know, we have this idea that there is a river, and the river has a river god, and the river god grows out of the river somehow. The river has existed so long that an entity has developed where the river is, and is the god of the river. But you can also take a river and make an entity, and, you know, assign an entity and create a deity for that hunk of land, of river. You can Buddhify the river. So there's a whole division of magic that Buddhist monks know how to do to Buddhify the land. And every time that Buddhism has moved to a new place, it has done that. For example, there is a pilgrimage that used to be performed in India, where you go from one charnel ground to another. The charnel grounds are places where yogins meditate. And you want to do a certain complete practice, you practice in each of the charnel grounds. And so you walk from one to the other, and you meditate in each one, and when you've done the whole cycle, you have completed a spiritual practice. It's a tantric practice. And they talk about these charnel grounds, Puli Ramalai and so on, is the expression they use for them. Now, when Tantra was brought to Japan, Kobo Daishi, the founder of Japanese Tantra, had to find some way of walking from one charnel ground to another. And so he took a certain section of Japan and he blessed it to be that place. He created a mirror site, a mirror site of these sacred places. And so now the Japanese walk from one place to another on this isthmus of land that sticks out from Japan. And doing that, they are performing the pilgrimage in India. This is a very Buddhist thing to do. You recreate the pilgrimage sites in the Holy Land in each of the countries that you conquer. And every time Buddhism comes to a land and tames the land, it creates a Buddhist civilization there by creating a mirror of the original pilgrimage spots. So Buddhist lamas have been, doing these ceremonies across America. And we watch, and we don't understand quite what the ceremonies are, but, somebody builds a stupa at that spot. And then you build a meditation center at that spot. And people, and over the years say, well, there is a finer energy here. Some people move into that spot, and they have their children there, and they build families there. And 100 or 2 years from now, there will be sacred spots across America. And they'll be tied up with American families. American families will no longer be bloodlines. They will be vessels for the ancestral spirits of that family. And that will be part of the civilization. When Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche came to the West, he was given certain properties. And he had the Karmapa bless those properties. And those properties were to be part of our mandala. He was creating a site and a set of holy places for the Mukpo clan and for Vajradhatu and Shambhala and for the Kagyu lineage in America. Now, we have kept those sites sacred, but not quite. People didn't understand what I'm saying now very well. Trungpa Rinpoche moved into a certain building in Boulder and called it the Kalapa Court. And I was trained, attending that court. So are you, Debbie. And some asshole sold the court. And when they did, they sold one of the spots we've tamed. That was a crime. That court was one of the nails in the land. And when we sold it, we weakened ourselves terribly. You can't put the guru in a building, have him live there, and then sell the damn building. Well, you can. You just become weaker. Now, when you lose all spots, when they sell all those sites, then you've got to go nomad. And there is an art to being homeless. There's a thing called tent culture. Periodically, the Kagyu have lost all their sacred sites because, armies came in supported by other branches of Buddhism and destroyed them. We Buddhists are a peaceful lot, and we never do that, but we did. And the Kagyus found themselves without any sites. His Holiness the Karmapa lost his seat and the great monastery where he lived. And he did the most brilliant thing. He created a gigantic caravan, and he took the monastery with all of its possessions and put them on the backs of yaks and mules, and the whole monastery with its thousands of monks traveled across Tibet from place to place. Every place where there were Kagyus that were devoted to the Karmapa, the monastery would come and settle it next to them and bless everybody and give everybody abhisheks and give them all teachings and then move on. It was a circus, a Dharma circus. Hi. Now, the practice of the Kagyu lineage is very complicated. When you get into Tantra, there is the Vajrayogini sadhana, the chanting practice that lasts 3 hours. And the Chakasavara sadhana, chanting practice that lasts 4 hours. And the shrines for it are bloody complicated, and there's all this stuff on them. You got to make tormas, and you can't do anything without making a couple of tormas. It takes, like Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village. Well, it takes a factory, and it takes a monastery to do these practices. You've got to have a store that sells all the sacred objects. When the Kagyu lineage converted to tents because of this terrible period, they stopped doing the complicated practices, and they had one practice that did everything that was in all those complicated practices. This practice has many parts. Each part is very short and simple, and it encompasses all the different practices that a Kagyu does, and it's called the Guru Yoga of the 4 Sessions by Mikya Dorje. The Mikya Dorje Guru Yoga of the 4 Sessions. And it's a short practice, and we do it every time a Lama dies. It's a very strange practice. It involves, no, I won't tell you what it involves. But when the monastery became a tent city, Karmapa simply commanded that people stop 4 times a day and do this practice. And everybody's tantric practice became doing this practice. And they would do it 4 times a day, and that's why they called it the Yoga of the 4 Sessions. And the monastery, traveled across the countryside, and they would stop 4 times a day, set up their shrines real quick, and everybody would do the practice. In fact, by doing that practice, you could have a complete path and gain enlightenment. And there's also an important practice for monasteries where they chant aloud the entire Buddhist canon. You take down the canon and pass out pages to the monks, and all the monks chant 1 or 2 pages, and you can get, in a week or a short period of time like that, you can chant the entire Buddhist canon with its tens of thousands of pages. Well, this tent city had monks walking up and down the parade, handing out sheets of paper, and the monks were chanting away while they walked. It was a nomadic tent culture thing. Okay, so I'm just giving you an idea of how deep tent culture is. Now, we developed a tradition in Shambhala of every year having a garden encampment where all the Kasum create tent cities. And the Sakyan, whoever he may be at that time, the Dorji Dradul or the Sakyan Mipam, moves into his tents in the middle of the tent city. And all the translators come up and get a tent. And we experience tent culture for a week or so. And a couple of times a year, we do a tent city thing. The aim is not to forget tent culture. To remember that we can convert everything into this rootless situation. In the rootless situation, the deities stay at the land and you move from place to place. So, it's kind of complicated. Some deities, some dralas you carry with you, others are at the sites and you have to come up to them. So, this civilization can be kind of complicated. Sometimes you live nomadically using tent culture. And you relate to the dralas the way people relate to the dralas, to the deities, to the shamanic gods, to the gods of the land, to the gods of families. You relate to them the way nomads do. And sometimes you live in homes and blend with the earth. But blending with the earth and joining with these deities of the earth is integral to Buddhism. It has been done every place that Buddhism exists and is integral to enlightened society. When it's completely established, when you've completely tamed a land, then there is a pilgrimage tradition, which is a way of practicing and enjoying all of the different spots that have been so empowered, moving through all their magnetic fields. So, for example, you've got Chaucer. It's a story of pilgrims going to Canterbury. And, Christianity, which has as its sacred spot Jerusalem, has transferred itself to England. Canterbury has become Jerusalem. And the magic of Jerusalem has become the magic of Canterbury. So you can have a pilgrimage to Canterbury, which is like the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and you perform the magic. It's really interesting. Pilgrimage is inseparable from religion. And if you have a profound contemplative society, it's going to have pilgrimage practice. So there you go. That's the last piece of the puzzle. I wanted to take the parts of enlightened society that I could analyze out and present each one of them. And I've covered what I understand in this weekend, all the parts I understand. There'll be more talks on this subject, which we're going to just record and find some locus to, show them on the web and continue our study. And this notebook is loose leaf, and we'll add more chapters to it. More translations, more writings. Thank you very much for being an audience to all of this and participating and asking questions and allowing me to present this. I've never been able to present the whole thing before. And I want to thank Bill Hebert for recording this, because we hope to save this so I won't have to present it again. We've been working for weeks to put together this program. I had the outline of every talk written 2 weeks ago. It's been walking around this notebook, and Steve and James and Bill and Kathleen and other people, and Debbie the last couple of days, and Vivian from the beginning. We've worked hard to put this program together, to give you an analysis of enlightened society as I understand it. I hope to continue the program and fill in the details of it it couldn't happen without an audience, and I couldn't do it in any other city because I can't prep Baltimore long distance, then fly to Baltimore and do it. So it had to be here. And I'd like to thank the Shambhala Center and the powers that be here for allowing me to do this, and I want to thank them for cooperating with me in this complex, long prep. When we boldly restructure the whole environment, and we've done the program, really differently from the way we usually do, all to express this notion of enlightened society. Nobody has obstructed anything. Everybody has helped. So, from my heart, I want to thank the Shambhala Center for putting this together, and all of you.